This is a display we have here of many of the weapons, the types they would have used in the American Revolution. The top one is the musket they would have started out the war with, largely made in England. Later on they called these Brown Besses. At this time they were just a land pattern musket. This is what your infantry would have carried in the British Army at this particular time. They're large 75 caliber weapons, accurate to about 80 yards. They can fire about 4 shots a minute. But they are a flintlock mechanism that uses a flint, priming powder to set off the main charge using a paper cartridge. And we'll kind of show that in a second. The gun primarily used in the American Army during the Revolutionary War is this one. This is one we imported from France. France was an ally. We relied on them heavily for our gunpowder, our muskets, or just any military supplies. France supplied them, and we imported these muskets by the tens of thousands and armed Washington's army with these particular muskets. It's a little bit lighter, smaller musket as far as the caliber. It uses barrel bands that actually hold the barrel on with this retaining spring rather than pins through the stock like the British system. This is the most common musket of the war. Many of the troops were raised early in the war to use a rifle, and this is one of the rifles that was used, like Dan Morgan's men, for instance, would have used one. They're accurate out to 200 yards. A man could hit a man in the chest every shot. In order to be part of Dan Morgan's regiment, you had to take 10 consecutive shots with your rifle in a piece of common writing paper, 8.5 by 11 inches at 200 yards. There are a lot of people today with a modern rifle that can't do that. So the fact these old flintlock rifles are very capable of doing that, and they have their advantages and their disadvantages. The rifle, of course, the advantage of accuracy, the muskets, speed of fire. 4 or 5 shots a minute with a musket. They don't have the range, but they do have the repeating fire. The other advantage of a musket, of course, is that they can also, in between rounds, you can also fit a bayonet onto them, and then you have basically a spear as a weapon in between rounds. You can defend yourself while your other components are coming up. You cannot put a bayonet on a rifle because there's no, stock doesn't allow it there. Okay. Well, we could, so anyway. This is the cartridge they'd use to load a musket. And this is carried, of course, in the cartridge box. And this is just a box that has holes drilled in the wood. Get it open here. Got my handful. The cartridge box just contains the bullets. This is a paper tube with the ball tied in one end of it and then the powder charge inside of it. Of course, out here, what we're doing here, we use blanks. It's just the gunpowder. But to load and fire a musket, the soldier would reach inside of his box. Musket would be up here under his arm. He would pull the hammer back to a safety position. You had to have 4 opposable teeth, and you rip that open, put some powder in the pan, and close the pan. So that's contains your priming powder now. Then the musket is then turned around, and then the Continental Army, they just hold it like this, and then the powder is poured in the barrel from the cartridge, and the whole thing is just inserted in the barrel. And you can see it's sized so the paper fits and everything. So that's just put inside the barrel. The rammer is drawn, they spin it over. You ram the cartridge home, return your ramrod, bring the musket up to a poised position, and then they get the command, make ready. They cock the piece, tee their feet, then they give the American Army the command, take aim. You drop the musket, look down the barrel, and then you fire. Now you can see right here, if you get a close-up of the flint mechanism right here, this is a piece of flint, piece of hardened steel. When you pull the trigger, make sparks. Those sparks set off the priming powder and set off the musket.